Welcome to the first main module. In this module, we're going to go over shapes, layers, frames, and all of the advanced tips I have for working in Figma and how to use all of those things to actually be a better UX UI designer. But to start things off, I want to kind of switch your perspective of the way you look at digital products. So I have a couple of screenshots here. Some of them are from mobile apps, some of them are from websites, and one of them is from a web app. And I want to analyze those screens with you to give you a perspective of how we actually look at all of those items when we're thinking from the Figma perspective. So in here, we have 3 screens from the mobile app called Revolut, and one thing that you can do with the designs, especially if you're a beginner, is trying to kind of analyze different spacings and sizes and how they're all working together to create a visually pleasing screen. So if you're a beginner, you can always kind of go in and try to replicate what's written in here. Revolut 4 ? And you can see that I kind of put in the text size that's most likely like 32, 33. Line height is either 40 or 41. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least getting to a range that feels good enough is great. You can try, maybe it's even bold. You can try to get the spacing. Even though the font may not be the right one, you can still kind of see that maybe they used a particular typeface. It's bold, the font size is 33, the line height is 41, and the letter spacing is most likely 1% or something. And you can try to figure out and analyze why they would use it like that. You can see that most likely they have margins on the left and right side at the size of 16. I'm guessing that this probably stretches to the edge of the screen like this, so the spacing on the left and right is the same, so the margins are 16, but there's no space in here for the text because it falls into another line. Then you can do the same thing for this, and so on and so on, and try to analyze the sizes. In here, let's see how big they made all of these tags that you can kind of tap on and choose. So they're like 36. It's a little bit below what is usually recommended for tappable sizes, which is 44 or 48 if you're working on Android, because Android kind of suggests 48, iOS suggests 44. This is 36, but the reason for it and why it's a little bit smaller is because the items that are tappable are actually very wide. So they're kind of making the tappable area more than 44 times 44. So having something like 117 pixels by 36 pixels is okay. So yeah, you can analyze the labels. You can see how this spacing is a little bit smaller than the spacing in here, and that's to ensure that this is kind of grouped visually and this is grouped visually, and you can't really make a mistake of knowing that global spending is the label that's connected to these items in here and not the ones above it, and so on. So yeah, definitely spend some time if you're someone who's just learning UX and UI design, and actually take real app screenshots and real website screenshots, not the screenshots that you're going to find in platforms like Dribbble, where other designers, often beginners who are not working in the industry, are just making visually pleasing screens that will never be developed and used. So it's better to analyze real products made by professionals like this. But that's not what the goal of this video is. I actually wanted to kind of analyze the screens from Figma's perspective. So in here you can see that this is text, this is also text, it's a little bit different. This is text within a frame that's represented with a blue background. There is also an icon in here, and it's kind of a repeatable pattern on all of these tags. So they have the same spacing on the left side and right side, and top and bottom for all of these tags in here. There's 2 states, one of them is selected, the other one is not selected, and they're visually different, but all of the other things besides the color of the text and the color of the background are the same. So all of the spacings, all of the font sizes, all of those things are consistent. Same thing in here, we have a button. This button is obviously somewhere on the top when it comes to the order of the layers because it's above the investments label and the button below it. We can also see the representation of the status bar in here and the home indicator. So all of those things we have to think about when we're designing screens. In here, we have a different screen. It has one frame that represents the main kind of screen, and it also has a hint of another layer letting us know that this is a model that overlays over the initial screens that was before it or comes after it. And once we hit close, we're most likely going to get to this screen, and then it's going to take the full screen size, and it's not going to be showing this kind of black top bar. We also have a button in here. You can see the style is pretty much the same. The roundness of these elements, so the border radius is the same. The font size is the same. It's white text on a colored background. This one is blue, this one is black. The black button casts some kind of a shadow below it that's dark gray. This one casts a blue shadow, but overall they're styled pretty similarly. In here we have some kind of a tag. We can see that this icon is placed so that the spacing in here feels like visually it's evenly spaced. There is some kind of a spacing in here between the icon and the text, and there is also some spacing until the edge of this element. So this would be done as a frame that has a roundness in it. It would have an icon. It's most likely done as an auto layout, so that means, and we're gonna go over all of these things that I'm mentioning, so don't worry, but auto layout basically allows you to kind of have elements, and depending on some kind of widths or sizes or properties that we put onto it, it's going to resize based on the content that we have inside. And that's most likely how this little tag on this card is done. You can see that this card has an image fill, but it also has some kind of an overlay over it. There is a little bit of black overlay that you can see over everything that kind of makes this text a little bit easier to read. We also have another card in here. The entire frame has some kind of a light gray background. You can always kind of pinpoint colors in here as well, and I'm guessing that these are like white text that we have in here. On this other screen, we have an icon that's inside some kind of frame that is colored, or it just uses a circle as an element below the icon. Since I'm a designer who's using Figma, I know that this is most likely actually a frame. All of these icons are most likely also in frames. As you can see, there should be some kind of a guide in here. Maybe it's 32 by 32, and that kind of feels actually right. And you can see 16 on the right margin again, like we had on the first screen. I'm gonna align it, move it here to see that the alignment is actually here. So even though the icon itself is not touching the edge of this screen, that's because it's most likely in a container that kind of keeps all of the icons consistently sized. And you can see the same thing in here. Now, most likely they're actually 32 by 32 in size, and there's 16 pixels of space in all of them. So try to kind of use either rectangles or kind of draw these elements around to see how they're done, and then you can actually figure out how they've been created in Figma. We have the search bar in here. That's most likely a frame that's a little bit rounded. It has a little bit of a darker shade of background than this one. It has the icon on the left side. It's most likely stuck to the left side. So when it comes to the sizing of it, it's not put on scale. It's put on like top and maybe even left and center. And search is probably like 12 or 16 pixels away from the icon. Maybe it's even 8. So yeah, just try to kind of think about all of the different like spaces and elements and how we can create all of these things that we are seeing on this screen right now. You can see that this element is actually kind of stuck to the edge of the screen, so we can kind of scroll through the content in here, but this is always going to be in the same place. We can do that in Figma as well. I'm going to teach you that. You can see that the label in here has the same spacing from this card in here like it did from all of the elements in here. So there are some consistencies that a team in Revolut follows when they're building all of their screens. And as we're thinking about the screens, we can know the shapes like rectangles and circles and all of the elements that we can actually draw in Figma to create all of the UI elements. When it comes to the other screens, we have Medium in here, and the top 3 screenshots are from iOS and the bottom 3 screenshots are from Android. You can see that the differences right now in a lot of the mobile apps that we're using are not that big. You can hardly notice that this is different from this. The font sizes are pretty much the same. Maybe some of them are a little bit different, like this June 2nd, 2022 feels a little bit bigger than May 26th does, but it can depend on a lot of different factors. You can see that they have tags in here as well. They have text here too. The home feels a little bit lighter than this, but all of those things are so minimal, it's really hard to notice unless you put a lot of focus onto it. What you're gonna see different is that the back chevron that we have in here on the iOS app is kind of a simple one that's very familiar to iOS users, while on Android they kind of switched it to an arrow shape that's more familiar to Android users. You can see that the keyboard, once they are open, are different and they're native to the apps that you're designing for, so like the platform that you're designing for. And that's one of the things that you're not going to have to recreate when you're designing. A lot of these keyboards, a lot of these elements are actually available to you in different kits, and just like explore Figma's community to be able to find them. So you can basically write in Android keyboard into the community and you're going to find someone who recreated it for you and you can use it. What you can see is that maybe even in some of these apps the steps are a little bit different, because on iOS we have full name and email in one step, while on the Android we had them as 2 steps. You would have to like enter your email, then hit continue, then enter your other details, or maybe it was full name first and then they asked you for the email. But overall you can see that the buttons look and feel similar. All of those things are kind of following the style that Medium has and not following the style that Android and iOS natively have for their components. What I also wanted to show you is that you can kind of place the screenshots that you do. Just sorry for this, but one note: a lot of the screenshots that you're gonna take are gonna be 3 times as big because on our devices, we usually have retina screens that have larger pixel densities, which means that what we in Design Tool would have as 1 pixel on phone is actually going to take 3 pixels. So a lot of the times you would have to divide the screenshot by 3 or 2 to get to the actual size that we're designing on. And yeah, once you do that, you can place your screenshots in frames like this, and you can then try to figure out what grids they're actually using. So you can move to columns, and maybe they've used like 4 columns or something. Most likely we've seen they have left and right margin of 16, and maybe this screen is a little bit better to actually test it out if it's actually 16 or more. Oh, it's more. Medium uses 24, not 16, so let's do that. And you can see that they've spaced some elements based on their grid. So knowing that they have this area in here that's not fully edge to edge, let's figure out how many columns they've used when they were designing. So most likely it was like, well, maybe the gutter is a little bit off. And you can kind of play around with things and figure out what they used. Maybe they used 10 columns for designing, because this feels like we actually hit it to the right pixel. So just play around with the number of columns that you have and play around with the gutter sizes, and you're gonna get it right. I'm gonna try it in here as well, because in here we might notice it a little bit better. And yeah, so let's do 10, let's do gutter like this, and 24. It doesn't seem like it's 10. I think it's 12, but I'm guessing that the gather sizes are wrong for me. And yeah, maybe it's something like this. Maybe it's 4. It might not be like fully perfect, but it could be that. And then you're also going to notice some other areas where for visual balance, for example, this element is going outside a little bit, because we usually see circular elements and trying to kind of force them into a more squared shape. So some of these parts that are going outside are actually placed like that because we want to achieve more visual balance. If we didn't have this grid turned on, we would feel like this is following a really strict alignment in here, even though there are a couple of pixels that are going outside. So yeah, just a couple of tips like how we can analyze apps and different elements that are in existing products. So in here you can see the arrow, it's probably in some kind of a frame. Same thing's happening here. There's some kind of a frame in here that shows where this was published. You can see the author. It's probably a frame or a circle where they placed this photo in. There's the name. It has the follow tag right beside it. If the name is a little bit shorter or longer, the follow would have the consistent spacing from the edge of this name to the actual tag. I'm guessing it's most likely 8. A lot of the designers and a lot of teams are following 4-point spacing rules and 8-point spacing rules. So that means that a lot of the elements are spaced with base number of 4 or 8. So that's why I'm kind of guessing these things. And you can see that if this were a shorter title or a shorter name, the follow would kind of move to the left side. If it was a longer name, the follow would move to the right side. So we know that this is probably made in auto layout as well. So we have all of those things in here. This is like a rectangle or a frame with a fill, and the fill is a photo. And you can kind of use that and analyze all of these screens and designs and trying to kind of learn from doing that. When it comes to the websites, we have a screenshot of a Slack website, and you can see that it's a pretty long website. This is probably all in one frame when it comes to navigation. This is the second section, so it's its own frame. The third section, again, another frame. Maybe it has more frames inside to kind of split it into these 3 sections as well. All of these little cards are their own frames. You can see that all of these have icons here on the top, then a bold title, and then some kind of a description below it. Arrow is sticking always to the right side, and depending on how large some of these cards are. So we can most likely guess that all of those were done as auto layouts as well. And they're all following the same rules. This is kind of going outside of one of these sections. So I'm guessing that this frame that has kind of a beige background had clipping cut off, and I'm gonna show you all of these things, but hopefully you're understanding what I'm saying and you're already familiar with Figma as we're diving into these and analyzing them. If you're not, we do have like a fully beginner Figma course where we go over all of these terms and features, so you can check that out as well. In here we have a visual. You can see that the part of this visual is kind of cropped from the shape below it. That's probably done with some kind of masking. So it's also something that we're going to learn how to do in this course as well. And we have a couple of cards. They have an image, they have labels, they have titles, and they have consistent heights. But the spacing in here depends on the height of the element. So that's kind of the flexible part of this card. It has a learn more on the left bottom edge and an arrow on the bottom right edge. What I wanted to also show you is that when we're designing, we're also supposed to think about different states. So if someone scrolls down, what happens to navigation? Slack decided to have the navigation as some kind of a floating element on the top that becomes rounded, and it casts a shadow over everything else to give you a hint of that element being over everything else. It's kind of on the top part of the invisible z-axis. If we're thinking of our screens, we are always thinking about x and y as axis that we're designing in. So when we're trying to replicate the three-dimensional space that we are aware of as humans, the z-axis actually happens with the order of the layers that we have on the left sidebar. So I'm guessing that this frame was kind of always stuck to the top, and they've decided for it to cast a shadow so that it kind of represents the light that's coming from the top part somewhere in here, and it's kind of casting the shadow over everything. Finally, when it comes to web apps, again, a little bit of a different thinking model that we have to have when we're designing for web apps. In here, we could have, again, tried to figure out the grid and how all of the things are structured and working together. But when it comes to web apps, we have this area that's kind of stretchable. So if we have a larger screen, all of these things are gonna stay in the middle. The left and right margin are going to get bigger and bigger. This image on the top is just going to stretch, and we're going to have more of this image cropped as we do that. The left sidebar is kind of consistent when it comes to their width. And that's pretty much it. You have elements in here. This one is selected. You can see how it's different from the other ones because it has a background. And you can see that all of them have icons, the titles at the same, or labels at the same place. They have little chevrons that let us know that this is actually expandable. If we click on it, something is gonna appear below it. And most likely the elements that we have on this page are actually gonna expand. So that's how I would approach starting my own UX UI design journey, is learning from other products, trying to figure out how they're designed, why they're designed that way, how are all of those things working together, how they're connected, how are the flows connected. And besides just trying to analyze the visual aspects of it, also to think about what this product is used for, why, and so on, and to get a better grasp of what you're actually going to be doing as a UX UI designer. So now that we've analyzed these screens in Figma with the screenshots that I took, it's time to move on and actually learn about layers, frames, and all of those things from a more advanced perspective so that you can know how to use them when you're designing in Figma. So see you in the next lesson.